So you and Michael Smith, did you guys know each other before ESPN or?
We did actually.
Okay.
Mike and I met in, I believe it was 2002, and we were both covering the Celtics Pistons playoff series. And he was working for the Boston Globe at the time. He was a general assignment sports reporter. I was covering Michigan State, but when Michigan State's seasons had concluded, once basketball was over, I asked if I could get some, time covering the NBA because it was a league I loved, a league I wanted to cover. And I was thinking, at some point, maybe this might be a career avenue is to cover the NBA full time. So I met him, and walking into a locker room, I already always expect to be one of the only women in there anyway. But I am usually, or at least at the time I was, one of the youngest people in there. And I looked up around the locker room and I'm like, who is this other young black dude? Because I just didn't see a lot of young black dudes in NBA locker rooms. And it turns out we had some mutual friends. And it was just kind of funny because they tried to set us up, which was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, because I guess someone tried to ask the other one on a date or something. Or...
Well, this is what happened. The official story.
The official story.
Mike has his version. I have mine. But the official story is the mutual friends that knew us decided we should all go to the movies. We went to see Spider-Man, as in Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That's
Right.
how long ago this was. And they sort of angled so that Mike and I were sitting next to each other. So we were obviously forced to talk to each other. And even though it was a movie, we got in some intermittent conversation. He didn't like do the yawn and put his arm around me. Like nothing like that happened. So, but I did think I was like, oh, he's a cool guy or whatever. I was like, I've never been to Boston. We should exchange information. So we exchanged information. I called him and I was just like, what's there to do around here? Like, yeah, let's like go out and hang. And he's like, I don't really hang out much. I just kind of go to work. And so he's not picking up on any signal. I'm like, dude, just ask me out so we could like go out and hang and I could, maybe get to know you a little better. And then he told me that he was busy that night because he was playing Madden and he had just put the Cardinals on franchise mode.
Okay.
And that's why I was like, now see, God is he's working a wonder in my life. This is not an avenue to be pursued at all. So that
he chose Madden over you.
He chose Madden. It's true. He chose Madden in terms of instead of hanging out with me. So
okay, so then you guys reunite at ESPN, and how did that show with you guys start to come together?
Well, Mike and I stayed in a little bit of contact over the years, and then once we got there, we were on very sort of parallel paths. He jumped into the TV stuff much quicker than I did. But we were going through like a period of frustration because the thing about ESPN is they have so many talented people there, but there's a constant fight for real estate. And we knew that, not only were we good friends, but we had the type of conversations that friends that should be brought to television. And so we were banging on doors trying to convince people to put us together as a duo. And we didn't get, much positive reception at all. There was the thinking, which, one producer said that we basically think alike. And we knew the only reason that they were saying that is because we were both young and black. And so optically, we didn't look any different. And people have to remember, well, two things. One, television is a copycat industry. And the thing that everybody was trying to duplicate was Michael Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser, black guy, white guy. Stephen A. Smith, Skip black guy, white guy. So
Right.
optically, they needed you to look different in order to sell to the viewer that they have a difference of opinion. If they see, a black man, a black woman around the same age sitting across a debate table or, across the table from each other, they're going to think, well, they think the same.
Yeah, they're just going to agree with each other the whole time.
Exactly. So this was sort of the thinking that was at play. And so a lot of people, just weren't in on us being TV partners. So we just decided, screw everybody, we're going to do a podcast. And we went to the audio department and we asked if we could like start this podcast. And we thought it was as simple as like us just going on the air and just riffing. And they were like, no, you got to audition. We're like, well, we work here. But we auditioned. They saw the chemistry that was there. And the podcast became our labor of love. And even though neither one of us were getting paid for it, it was totally, extra homework assignment, the podcast started to generate some real steam. And from that is how I wound up next to Mike on Numbers Never Lie. And so it just started from a place of just kind of being fed up, and it led to someplace good.
Well, and you guys sort of brought a political side to ESPN, which ESPN didn't really embrace as a whole. It seems like ESPN wanted everyone to kind of focus on sports.
Well, I'll say this, and I would challenge you there because
Okay.
Mike and I were not political necessarily. Like we weren't talking about immigration reform on television. We were
Right.
not talking about healthcare reform. We were not talking about policy issues. Were we talking about social issues that intersected with sports? Absolutely. We were not bringing conversations out of the blue that did not have anything to do with sports and the news of the day. When we decided to talk about Trayvon Martin, we did it because the Miami Heat had worn the hoodies to bring attention and awareness to what happened to Trayvon Martin. LeBron James is the best player in the NBA. We're going to talk about the things that he's doing. So it was always within context. And there are certain times, I think, where there are certain events, certain things that happen in this country where it's okay to put sports on pause and talk about what this means to us as a society. When Philando Castile happened, Eric Garner, those are things we talked about on TV because athletes who looked like those that were victimized, they had a lot to say about it. And it gave us permission, if you will, to join that conversation.
Well, I mean, sports has always been political.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali, Jackie Robinson, the Olympics with the raised fist, like it goes back.
No, and that's why it's sort of disingenuous that people today, because of Colin Kaepernick, because LeBron James has been so vocal, have this attitude that they shouldn't be allowed to talk about these issues that are important to them, or that sports entities like ESPN and others shouldn't cover what they say about issues not having to do with their sport. Those people have a very narrow and shallow knowledge of history because it's always been the case. Not to mention, from a purely political standpoint, I don't know if people realize this, but when those new arenas go up, when those stadiums go up, they have to come to taxpayers for
Right.
that money.
Yeah.
So inherently, it is political. And when you look at the influence of the presence of military, the presence of the national anthem, those are all political elements that have been baked into sports. And we look at the NFL not for the most genuine of reasons, it's because they're paid to do it. So this idea that they don't want their food touching on the plate, it's just not realistic.